Report 1. Christy Marac, Lancaster, Pennsylvania, December 1992. A small and quiet town. One of those where everybody knows each other. The kind of place where you leave your door unlocked at night without thinking twice. But on a cold winter morning, everything changed. The case I'm about to tell you shook not only Lancaster but the entire country. It's a story of loss, the pursuit of justice, and how a killer managed to hide in plain sight for decades. It all began on a Tuesday or December 21st. Kids were excited about Christmas coming. Teachers planning the last classes before the break. It was supposed to be just another normal day at Rohrerstown Elementary School. But when the bell rang at 8:30 a.m., something was wrong. The 6th grade classroom was empty. No teacher, no students. Nobody knew what was going on. The principal, Harry Goodman, started to worry. The teacher for that class, Christy Marac, was never late. She was known for always arriving early, preparing the room, getting everything ready for the students. Harry tried to call her. Once, twice, 3 times. Nothing. It just went to voicemail. His stomach started to churn. Something wasn't right. After a few more failed attempts to contact her, Harry decided he needed to check in person. He knew Christy's address. It wasn't far from the school. It must be just car trouble, he thought, trying to calm himself. But deep down, a growing fear was consuming him. When he arrived at the condo where Christy lived, he saw her car parked. His heart raced. Harry approached the apartment door. He knocked once, twice, called Christy's name. Silence. That's when he noticed. The door was ajar. He pushed it gently and entered. What he saw next would change his life forever. There, on the living room floor, was Christy. Motionless. Harry ran to her, hoping, praying she was just unconscious. But one look was enough to realize Christy was dead. The next few minutes were a blur. Harry ran out, shouting for help. Neighbors came out of their homes, frightened. Someone called the police. In a matter of minutes, the quiet street transformed into a crime scene. Police cars, ambulances, yellow tape cordoning off the area. The detectives who arrived quickly realized this wasn't a natural death. Christy's body showed clear signs of violence. The news spread like wildfire through small-town Lancaster. A young teacher, beloved by all, brutally murdered in her own home. People locked their doors, looked over their shoulders. Who could have done something so horrible, and why? Theories started to emerge. Was it an ex-boyfriend? A stranger who broke in? Someone Christy knew? While the town tried to process the shock, the police began their investigation. They collected evidence, interviewed neighbors, scoured Christy's life for clues. But nothing seemed to make sense. Christy had no enemies. She was adored by her students, respected by her colleagues. Who could want to hurt her? What the investigators didn't know was that they were just at the beginning of a case that would take decades to solve, and that the answer was closer than they imagined. The initial investigation was intense. Detectives worked day and night, following every lead, no matter how small. They combed through Christy's life, interviewed friends, family, co-workers. Everyone said the same thing. Christy was a wonderful person, dedicated to her work, always willing to help. It didn't make sense for anyone to want to hurt her. One of the first things investigators noticed was that there were no signs of forced entry at Christy's home. This raised suspicion that she knew her killer. Maybe someone she voluntarily let in. But who? People close to her were interrogated, their alibis checked. Nothing seemed to add up. Meanwhile, the town of Lancaster was in panic. Parents no longer let their children play in the street. People locked their doors, looked suspiciously at strangers. The fear was palpable. After all, if something like this could happen to someone like Christy, no one was safe. Months passed, and the case remained unsolved. The police had collected DNA at the crime scene, but at the time the technology was limited. There wasn't a comprehensive database for comparison. Physical evidence was scarce, and leads were going cold. The investigators' frustration was evident. They knew the killer was out there, maybe even walking freely on the streets of Lancaster. Christie's family was devastated. Her parents, Vincent and Marianne, and her brother Vince, didn't give up seeking justice. They gave interviews, participated in TV shows about unsolved crimes, did everything they could to keep the case alive in people's memories. It was painful to relive everything each time, but they couldn't let Christie's murder be forgotten. Years went by. Life in Lancaster moved on, but that crime was never forgotten. Whenever someone passed by the school where Christie taught or saw a photo of her, the question came back: who could have done something so horrible? The answer seemed increasingly distant. The detectives who initially investigated the case started retiring. New officers took over, revisited the evidence, tried new approaches, but the result was always the same: dead ends. Christie Marak's case became one of those mysteries that seemed destined to never be solved. But fate had other plans. In 2015, more than 2 decades after the crime, a new prosecutor took on the case. Christina Wilson was young, determined, and fascinated by unsolved cases. She decided to take a fresh look at Christie's murder. Wilson knew technology had advanced a lot since 1992. Maybe, she thought, there was a way to use this to her advantage. Wilson began researching new investigation techniques. That's when she heard about genetic genealogy. It was a revolutionary approach, using DNA to trace family trees and find distant relatives of suspects. She thought, what if we could use the killer's DNA this way? It was a long shot, but worth trying. The prosecutor contacted a specialized laboratory, Parabon Nanolabs. They were pioneers in this technology. Wilson sent the DNA samples collected at the crime scene so many years ago. It was a small chance, her mom, but it was the best they had in years. Meanwhile, life in Lancaster went on. People still talked about the case from time to time, especially on the anniversaries of the crime. But for many, it was a story from the past, a sad mystery that would probably never be solved. What no one knew was that, during this time, there was a man in town who carried a terrible secret. Raymond Rowe, known as DJ Freeze, was a popular figure in Lancaster. He entertained at parties, weddings, school events. Everyone knew DJ Freeze. He was charismatic, talented, always with a smile on his face. Months passed since Wilson sent the DNA samples. The wait was agonizing. Finally, in 2018, came the news that would change everything. The lab had managed to create a genetic profile of the killer. More than that, they had found distant relatives of his in the genealogical database. From there, it was meticulous detective work. Investigators built a huge family tree, following the branches, looking for someone who fit the killer's profile. And that's when Raymond Rowe's name came up. At first, it seemed absurd. DJ Freeze, a killer, the guy who livened up the town's parties. Impossible. But the more the investigators dug, the more the pieces fit together. Rowe was the right age, lived in Lancaster at the time of the crime, and frequented the same places as Christie. The police needed to be sure. They couldn't just accuse a well-known person in the community without solid evidence. So, they devised a plan. At an event where Rowe was working as a DJ, an undercover officer managed to collect a DNA sample from him. A used water bottle, a discarded napkin. It was all they needed. The lab compared Rowe's DNA with that from the crime scene. The result was shocking. It was a perfect match. There was no more doubt. DJ Freeze, the guy everyone knew and liked, was the killer they had been looking for 25 years. The news hit Lancaster like a bombshell. People couldn't believe it. Raymond Rowe was a normal guy, married, with kids. He played at graduation parties, at weddings. How could someone like that be a killer? It was hard to process. On June 25, 2018, the police arrested Rowe. It was a surreal scene. The famous DJ, handcuffed, being taken to the police car. People on the streets watched open-mouthed. Some even shouted, not believing what they were seeing. During the interrogation, Rowe initially denied everything. He said he didn't know Christy, that he had never been to her house. But as the evidence was presented, he began to change his story. He admitted he knew Christy, that they had met at a bar, but he continued to deny the murder. Prosecutor Christina Wilson was determined to bring justice. She knew she had a solid case. The DNA was irrefutable. Moreover, they discovered that Rowe had a white Toyota Celica at the time of the crime, exactly as a witness had described seeing near Christy's house on that fateful morning. Christy's family was in shock. After so many years, they finally had a name, a face for the killer. Vince, Christy's brother, said in an interview, "It's a relief to know who did this. But at the same time, it's infuriating to think that he was here all along, living his life as if nothing had happened." Rowe's trial promised to be one of the biggest events in Lancaster's history. Everyone wanted to know the details, understand how someone seemingly normal could hide such a terrible secret for so long. People who knew Rowe were confused, trying to reconcile the image of the fun DJ with that of a brutal killer. But the trial never happened. In January 2019, to avoid the death penalty, Rowe pleaded guilty. He admitted to raping and killing Christy Marak. The courtroom was packed when he made his statement. People cried, others looked on in anger. Rowe kept his head down the whole time, avoiding looking at Christy's family or anyone else in the room. During the confession hearing, disturbing details about the crime came to light. Rowe admitted that he had seen Christy a few times at bars where he played. He found her attractive but had never spoken to her. On the morning of the crime, he said he was driving through her neighborhood for no particular reason. When he saw Christy leaving her house, something a snap tag in his head, Rowe recounted that he parked the car and followed Christy to her door. When she opened it, he pushed her inside. Christy fought, but Rowe was stronger. He raped her and, fearing being identified, killed her. He used a cutting board he found in the kitchen to hit her, and then strangled her with his bare hands. What shocked many people was the coldness with which Rowe described everything. He spoke as if he was telling someone else's story. He showed no visible remorse. When the judge asked why he had done it, Rowe simply said, "I don't know. I can't explain it." After the crime, Rowe said he went home, took a shower, and went on with his normal life. He played at a party that same night. In the years that followed, whenever he heard about the case on TV or radio, he would change the channel. He said he tried to bury the memory of what he had done. Rowe's confession left more questions than answers. How could someone commit such a brutal crime and then live an apparently normal life for so long? Forensic psychologists who analyzed the case suggested that Rowe might have traits of psychopathy, explaining his lack of empathy and remorse. The Marak case became a study on how killers can hide in plain sight. Rowe wasn't a strange recluse, but an active and well-liked member of the community. This made many people in Lancaster question how well they really knew their neighbors, friends, and acquaintances. The impact of the case on Lancaster was profound. People who had known Rowe for years were left questioning their judgment. How could they not have noticed something? Were there signs they missed? It sparked conversations about the nature of evil and how well we can truly know anyone. For Christy's family, the resolution brought a mix of emotions. There was relief in finally knowing the truth, but also renewed grief. Vince Marak, in a statement to the press, said, "We've waited 27 years for this day. Now we can finally say, Christy, we've gotten justice for you." The case also highlighted the importance of advances in forensic science. Without genetic genealogy, Rowe might never have been caught. It opened up discussions about the use of DNA databases in solving cold cases, with both supporters praising its effectiveness and critics raising privacy concerns. Raymond Rowe was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As he was led out of the courtroom, many in Lancaster felt a chapter of their town's history finally closing. But the scars left by the crime would take much longer to heal. In the years since, Lancaster has worked to honor Christy's memory. The elementary school where she taught dedicated a memorial garden to her. Her family established a scholarship in her name for aspiring teachers. These efforts serve as a reminder of the bright, caring person Christy was, beyond just being a victim of a terrible crime. The Christy Marak case remains a sobering reminder of how a single act of violence can ripple through a community for decades. It's a story of loss, perseverance, and the long road to justice. For the people of Lancaster, it will always be more than just a crime story. It's a part of their history, a wound that has finally begun to heal. As time passes, the focus has shifted from the horror of the crime to celebrating Christy's life and the positive impact she had in her short time as a teacher. Her story continues to inspire new generations in Lancaster, reminding them of the importance of kindness, dedication, and the pursuit of justice, no matter how long it takes. Report 2. I had just graduated high school when I got my first job at the local Walmart. It was 2013 and I was eager to start working, not imagining the nightmare I was about to live. My manager, Billy, initially put me on self-checkout, but I soon asked to be transferred to the cigarette counter, thinking it would be a quieter job. Little did I know that this decision would drastically change my life. In the first few days, I noticed a teenager who frequently tried to buy Marlboro cigarettes. Every time I asked for his ID, he quickly left. At first, I thought he would give up, but he started showing up later and later, almost at the end of my shift. His persistence began to bother me, but I tried to stay calm. The kid finally introduced himself as Matt. At first, I tried to be polite, warning him about the dangers of smoking. Sometimes he would just hang around talking, and I began to suspect he was flirting with me. I decided to be firmer, threatening to call the police if he kept bothering me. I thought that would solve the problem, but I was terribly wrong. One night, as I was leaving work, I found Matt waiting for me in the parking lot. I ran to my car, but he was faster. He grabbed my purse and fled, jumping over a nearby fence. I was in shock, unable to believe what had happened. I reported the incident to the police, but they couldn't do much. The security cameras didn't capture Matt's face, who seemed to know all the blind spots. The officers just advised me to call again if he bothered me again. Walmart management, as a precaution, assigned a security guard to escort me to my car every night. For a few weeks, everything was quiet, and I thought the nightmare was over. Then, I started receiving strange messages on Facebook. They were profiles without photos, sending comments about my appearance. Initially, I ignored them, thinking they were just spam, until I received a message with a photo of my house and the phrase, "Stop ignoring me." My blood instantly froze. I contacted the police again, but they didn't take the situation seriously. One of the officers even suggested it could just be an admirer. That night, when I left work, I discovered that my admirer had vandalized my car, writing, "Stop ignoring me," on the door. Fear took over me, and I didn't know what to do anymore. The following weeks were a living hell. Matt sent daily messages, increasingly disturbing and explicit. He seemed to know my every move, describing details of my routine that only someone constantly observing me could know. I tried changing my schedules, altering my routes, but nothing worked. He always found me. Fear began to consume every aspect of my life. I could barely sleep, always imagining that Matt could be watching me through the window. At work, every customer approaching the cigarette counter made me tremble, thinking it could be him in disguise. My colleagues noticed my nervous state, but I was ashamed to fully explain the situation. Desperate for some relief, I decided to create new social media profiles and change my phone number. For 2 weeks, I felt a slight respite. The messages ceased, and I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, Matt had given up. It was in this moment of false security that I made the mistake that almost cost me everything. Excited by the apparent calm, I created a profile on a dating app. I quickly made a connection with a guy named Richard. We talked for a few days, and he seemed to be everything I could want. Kind, attentive, and most importantly, normal. When he suggested a meeting at a local restaurant, I accepted without hesitation. On the night of the date, I got ready carefully, feeling a mix of nervousness and excitement I hadn't experienced in months. I arrived at the restaurant a few minutes early, eager to meet Richard. When I entered, my heart nearly stopped. Sitting at the table, impeccably dressed and with a disturbing smile, was Matt. Panic instantly took over me. My mind screamed for me to run, but my feet seemed glued to the floor. Matt stood up, still smiling, and began to approach. "Oh, I thought you wouldn't come," he said, his voice a bizarre mixture of joy and threat. I wanted to scream, but my voice disappeared. Matt started apologizing frantically, saying he had misinterpreted things, that he just wanted to be normal. He spoke quickly, his words stumbling over each other as he tried to justify his obsessive behavior. He mentioned details of our online conversations, proving that it really was him behind Richard's profile. With each word, I felt my stomach sink further. With my heart racing, I managed to find my voice and muttered something about needing to go to the bathroom. Matt seemed to hesitate, but agreed. As soon as I entered the bathroom, I locked the door and dialed 911 with trembling fingers. Between sobs, I explained the situation to the operator, begging for immediate help. The minutes that followed seemed like an eternity. I heard Matt calling my name from outside, his voice alternating between concern and irritation. I silently prayed for the police to arrive before he decided to break down the door. Finally, I heard sirens approaching and then the sound of a commotion in the restaurant. When I finally found the courage to leave the bathroom, the scene that awaited me was surreal. Matt was handcuffed, surrounded by police officers, screaming and thrashing like a cornered animal. His eyes met mine, and what I saw in them chilled me to the bone, a mixture of anger, desperation, and something I can only describe as sick obsession. One of the officers approached me, asking if I was okay. I nodded mechanically, unable to form words. He explained that Matt had tried to pull out a knife when the police arrived, resulting in his quick immobilization. The idea that he was armed, ready to harm me, made my knees weak. The officer held me, preventing me from falling. In the days that followed, I discovered more details about the extent of Matt's obsession. The police found in his room a veritable shrine dedicated to me. There were pictures of me everywhere, taken without my knowledge at various times of the day. There was also a detailed diary of my activities, notes about my conversations, and even elaborate plans for our future together. The most disturbing thing was discovering that Matt was living in a nearby homeless shelter. Apparently, he had run away from home months ago, abandoning school and family to be close to me. The idea that someone could give up everything for such a sick obsession left me deeply shaken. How could someone I barely knew have developed such intense and distorted feelings? The following weeks were a blur of police statements, sessions with psychologists, and sleepless nights. My parents insisted that I move back in with them, at least temporarily. I agreed, grateful for the sense of security it provided. I quit my job at Walmart, unable to face that place again without reliving the terror I had experienced. Matt was charged with stalking, threatening, and attempted assault. During the trial, sitting in the courtroom, I heard even more disturbing details about his obsession. Apparently, he had developed an entire narrative in his mind, where we were soulmates destined to be together. Each rejection from me was, to him, just an obstacle to be overcome in our love story. The judge, recognizing the gravity of the situation and the danger Matt posed, handed down a severe sentence. In addition to prison, he was required to undergo intensive psychiatric treatment. Hearing the sentence brought momentary relief, but the sense of security I longed for still seemed distant. In the months that followed, I struggled to regain some sense of normalcy in my life. I started therapy, trying to process the trauma and constant fear that had become part of my daily life. Gradually, with the support of my family and some close friends, I began to take small steps towards recovery. Report 3. My mom ran a roadside diner, the kind that mainly serves truck drivers. It was our family business, and I always helped out after school, washing dishes or serving customers. At the time, I didn't realize the danger. It was a typical summer day. The diner was packed, with the usual clatter of cutlery and conversations. The smell of coffee and greasy food filled the air, mixed with the diesel odor from the trucks outside. I was busy, serving and clearing plates. That's when he walked in. An ordinary man like so many others who passed through daily, but there was something different about the way he looked at me that made me uncomfortable. At first, I didn't pay much attention. I was used to seeing different faces every day. But soon I noticed that this man started appearing more frequently. He always sat in the same spot, a bit secluded, and would watch me. What at first seemed like a friendly smile turned into something that gave me chills. One day, while I was cleaning a table near him, the man called me over. Reluctantly, I approached. He said he had a gift for me, a small doll. I was confused and scared. Luckily, my mom appeared at that moment. She took the doll from my hand and returned it to the man, firmly saying it wasn't appropriate to give gifts to unknown children. His expression changed completely. The smile vanished, replaced by something cold and frightening. He muttered something and quickly left the diner. That night, I couldn't sleep well. I told my mom I was scared, but she tried to reassure me, saying we probably wouldn't see him again. Unfortunately, she was wrong. In the following weeks, the man continued to show up. He kept his distance but always watched me. I started having frequent nightmares. My mom grew increasingly worried and began keeping me in the kitchen, away from customers and eyes. But that didn't stop him from continuing to appear. Then, a letter addressed to me arrived at the diner. No return address, just my name written on it. My mom, suspicious, opened the envelope. It was a letter with content completely inappropriate for a child. I felt sick just knowing what was written. My mom was livid with anger and fear. That's when I realized how serious the situation really was. Immediately, my mom called the police. The officers came, heard our story, and took the letter as evidence. But without more information about the man, they said they couldn't do much beyond increasing patrols in the area. In the days that followed, I lived in a constant state of alert. Every noise startled me. Every shadow seemed to be him. The diner, which was once a familiar and safe place, now seemed like a location where I was constantly exposed and in danger. The following weeks were a nightmare. My mom tried to keep the diner's routine normal, but I could see the fear in her eyes every time the door opened. She started staying closer to me, always alert to any suspicious movement. Regular customers noticed the change in the atmosphere, but no one knew exactly what was going on. We kept everything secret, afraid that talking about it might make the situation worse. One night, after closing the diner, we heard a strange noise coming from outside. My mom told me to stay in the kitchen while she went to check. Those were the longest minutes of my life. When she came back, she was pale. She found an envelope stuck to the car's windshield with my name written on it. Inside were photos of me taken from afar, at school, at the diner, even playing in our home's backyard. Along with the photos, a note said, "We'll be together soon." That same night, my mom called the police again. This time, they took the situation more seriously. An officer was stationed near the diner for a few days, but the man seemed to have disappeared. However, the damage was already done. I couldn't sleep alone anymore, was afraid to go to school, to stay at the diner. My life had become a constant cycle of fear and anxiety. The days dragged on. Every customer who entered the diner made me tremble. I started seeing his face everywhere, even knowing it wasn't real. My mom tried to distract me, keep me busy in the kitchen, away from customers' view. But nothing seemed to help. Fear had taken deep root in me. Then, on a rainy afternoon, something happened that changed everything. I was washing dishes in the kitchen when I heard a scream coming from the dining area. I ran to see what was happening and saw my mom confronting the man. He had returned, more aggressive this time. He was shouting that I belonged to him, that no one could separate us. I was paralyzed with fear, unable to move or scream for help. That's when one of our regular customers, a truck driver we had known for years, intervened. He grabbed the man from behind, immobilizing him until the police arrived. Everything happened so fast. In minutes, the diner was full of police officers. The man was taken away in handcuffs, screaming and looking at me in a way I'll never forget. In the days that followed, we discovered he was a known predator, wanted in other states for similar crimes. The police found in his truck a veritable arsenal of disturbing objects, more photos of me, children's clothes, ropes, duct tapes. It was shocking to realize how close I had been to real danger. Even with the man in prison, we couldn't feel safe in that place anymore. My mom decided we needed to start over somewhere else. We sold the diner and moved to a different town, far away. It was hard to leave behind the only home I had known. But at the same time, I felt an immense relief leaving that place that had become the source of my nightmares. Moving to a new town was difficult, but necessary. In the first few months, I still woke up in the middle of the night, in a cold sweat, thinking I had heard the sound of a truck approaching. My mom did her best to create a safe and normal environment for me, but we both knew things would never be the same. I started attending a new school, but I had trouble making friends. Whenever someone approached me, I would withdraw, fearing it could be another threat. The legal process dragged on for months. I had to give statements, relive everything I desperately wanted to forget. The lawyers and police were kind, but each question, each detail I had to remember, was like reliving the nightmare. My mom was always by my side, holding my hand, giving me strength when I thought I couldn't go on. She was my safe harbor in the midst of the storm our life had become. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the trial came to an end. The man was convicted, not only for the crimes against me but also for a series of other cases that came to light during the investigations. Knowing he would be in prison for many years brought some relief, but the fear persisted. Part of me always wondered if there were others like him out there, ready to do the same to other innocent children. Over time, we began to rebuild our lives. My mom found a job at a local diner, and I gradually adapted to the new school. I started therapy, something I initially was reluctant to accept, but which proved fundamental in dealing with the trauma. Slowly, I learned to trust again, to not see danger on every corner or in every stranger's gaze. Years passed, and I grew up. The frightened girl gave way to a cautious teenager, and then to a young adult determined not to let that experience define her entire life. I decided to major in psychology, aiming to help other victims of similar traumas. I wanted to transform that pain into something positive, to give meaning to everything I had been through. Today, I look back and see how much that event changed the course of my life. Not a day goes by without me thinking about that time, that roadside diner. Sometimes, I catch myself imagining how my life would have been if none of that had happened. But then I remember all the people I've been able to help because of my experience. How my relationship with my mom strengthened. And I think that maybe, in some strange way, something good came out of all that darkness. I still have difficult moments. Certain noises, smells, or situations can transport me back to that time in a matter of seconds. I've learned to deal with these triggers, but they never completely disappear. It's like a scar that, although healed, is still there to remind me of what I went through. But now, instead of paralyzing me with fear, this memory gives me strength. It reminds me of how resilient I am, of how much I survived. I decided to share this story not to seek sympathy or pity, but to alert other parents and children about the dangers that can be hidden in the most common places. I want people to understand that vigilance and open communication are fundamental to protecting our children. If my experience can help prevent something similar from happening to another child, then all the suffering will have been worth it. Because in the end, that's what it's about. Transforming our pain into something that can make a difference in the world. Even after so many years, I still have difficulties dealing with certain aspects of that experience. Sometimes, a specific smell or sound brings me back to that day in the diner. When this happens, I need to stop, take a deep breath, and remind myself that I'm safe now. It's not easy, but little by little, I'm learning to deal with these situations. My mom and I never talked about opening another restaurant. She found a job in an office and seems satisfied with the quieter life we lead now. Still, I notice she gets tense when she sees trucks on the road or when we pass by roadside diners. I think some marks never completely disappear. Sometimes I wonder what happened to that man. I know he was imprisoned, but I didn't follow the case after that. Part of me wants to know, another part prefers not to think about it. It's strange how someone I knew for such a short time could have such a big impact on my life. Life moved on, as it always does. I finished school, got a job, have my own routine now. I can't say I've completely overcome what happened. I don't know if that's possible, but I've learned to live with this part of my story. It's there. It's part of who I am. But it's not all that I am. Life goes on, with its ups and downs, and I move forward, one day at a time. Report 4. I never thought a simple family road trip could turn into the worst nightmare of my life. It was supposed to be just another long weekend, you know? Me, my wife, and our 2 kids decided to hit the road to visit the children's grandparents. We made this trip every year, but this time, man, just remembering it gives me chills. The trip started normally. We left home early, the kids excited in the back seat, my wife Laura checking if we hadn't forgotten anything for the 1,000th time. The day was beautiful, blue sky, a few clouds here and there. We hit the road and I was feeling good, listening to music, chatting with the family, nothing out of the ordinary. After about 2 hours of driving, we stopped at a gas station to refuel and use the bathroom. That's when I first noticed it. A big black pickup truck stopped next to us at the gas pump. The guy who got out gave me a weird look, you know? The kind that makes you feel a shiver down your spine without knowing why. I tried not to make much of it. Maybe the guy was just having a bad day. We got back on the road and I had even forgotten about the gas station incident. But then, about half an hour later, I saw it in the rearview mirror. The same black pickup was behind us. Coincidence, I thought. After all, and it was a main road. Lots of people probably took the same route. But something about the way the car was following us didn't sit right with me. The guy kept changing lanes, sometimes getting really close to us, then backing off. I started to get nervous, but I didn't want to scare Laura and the kids. I decided to make another stop, thinking he'd pass us by. We stopped at one of those roadside diners. The kids were hungry anyway. We went into the diner and I kept an eye outside. I saw the black pickup pull into the parking lot and the guy get out. He came in too, sat in a corner and just sat there, drinking coffee. But his eyes never left our table. Laura noticed I was uneasy and asked what was going on. I explained quietly, not wanting the kids to hear. We finished eating as quickly as possible and went back to the car. I was in a cold sweat by this point. As we were leaving the parking lot, I saw in the rearview mirror the guy running to his car. My heart nearly jumped out of my mouth. I sped up a bit, trying to keep calm. It's just a coincidence, I kept repeating to myself, but I didn't believe it anymore. Back on the road, the pickup appeared behind us in a matter of minutes. This time, he was more aggressive. He'd get really close, almost touching our bumper. I was getting terrified. Laura grabbed her cell phone to call the police, but there was no signal. The kids started to realize something was wrong, asking why Daddy was driving so fast. My mind was racing a mile a minute. I was trying to stay calm, but my heart was beating so hard I thought I was going to have a heart attack right there. Laura was frantically messing with her phone, trying to find any signal to call the police. The kids in the back seat started crying, feeling the heavy atmosphere. I wanted to say everything was okay, but even I didn't believe that anymore. Suddenly, the pickup accelerated and pulled up beside us. The guy lowered his window and gestured for us to pull over. I didn't think twice. I floored it. The car jerked and the kids screamed. Laura turned around, trying to calm them down, but you could see the panic in her eyes. The pickup fell behind for a moment, but soon was on our tail again. I was driving like a madman, passing other cars, trying to get rid of that lunatic. My mind was a whirlwind. Who was this guy? What did he want with us? Why us? Millions of questions and no answers. I just knew I had to protect my family no matter what. After about 15 minutes of this crazy chase, I saw a sign indicating a gas station and a diner. I decided to risk it. I thought if we stopped somewhere with more people, maybe the guy would give up. I made the turn suddenly, almost skidding. I heard the pickup's tires screeching behind us. I pulled into the gas station parking lot with tires squealing and stopped right in front of the convenience store. I got out of the car yelling for help. People looked scared. The black pickup entered the parking lot more slowly, as if the driver had realized there were now witnesses. He circled around and stopped on the other side of the station. I ran into the store asking the clerk to call the police. Laura stayed in the car with the kids, locked in. While I was explaining the situation to the clerk, all out of breath and scared, I saw through the store window the pickup guy getting out of his car. My blood ran cold. He was a big guy, must have been about 6'3", bald, with a tattoo on his neck. He was wearing a black leather jacket and jeans. He didn't seem nervous or anything, walking calmly towards the store. The clerk, a young kid who looked as scared as I was, said the police were on their way. But what if they didn't get here in time? The pickup guy entered the store. My whole body tensed up. He walked past me as if I didn't even exist and went straight to the drink cooler. He grabbed a beer, went to the register and paid, all cool and collected. Then he looked at me, gave a weird smile, and left. I was paralyzed, not understanding anything. I ran outside to see if my family was okay. Laura and the kids were in the car, terrified but okay. I saw the pickup guy getting into his car. He started the engine but didn't leave. He just sat there, as if waiting for us to make the next move. The sound of sirens in the distance was never so welcome in my life. The sirens got louder, and suddenly 2 patrol cars pulled into the parking lot at full speed. I thought finally this nightmare was going to end. But then something happened that I'll never understand. The pickup guy, instead of fleeing or surrendering, simply started his car and calmly drove out of the station, as if nothing had happened. The cops didn't even pay attention to him. They came straight to me. I was so relieved to see the police that I started talking all at once, tripping over my words. I explained about the chase, the weird guy, everything. They listened carefully, asked Laura some questions too. But when I mentioned the black pickup, they looked at each other in a strange way. One of them asked if I was sure it was a black pickup. Man, I had never been so sure of anything in my life. The cops asked us to wait while they checked the station's cameras. I stood there, hugging Laura and the kids, still shaking. After about 20 minutes that felt like an eternity, the cops came back. Their expression was a mixture of confusion and disbelief. They said that in the camera footage, no black pickup appeared, just our car entering the station at high speed. I was speechless. What do you mean there was no pickup? We had just seen the guy. The store clerk confirmed he saw a big man buying beer, but said he had arrived on foot, not by car. Nothing made sense. Laura looked at me, confused. The kids were quiet, scared by all this. I started to doubt my own sanity. The police suggested we rest a bit before continuing our trip. They said road stress can sometimes make us see things, but I knew what I had seen. That guy, that pickup, it was all too real. We decided to spend the night at a nearby hotel. No one was in the right state of mind to keep driving. At the hotel, while the kids slept, Laura and I stayed awake, trying to understand what had happened. That's when she showed me something on her phone that made my blood run cold. During all that confusion, she had received a friend request on a social network. The profile picture was of the pickup guy. The name on the profile, John Doe. Too generic to be true. I spent the whole night awake, going over every detail of that crazy day in my head. Morning came and we decided to go back home. We weren't in the mood to visit the grandparents anymore. On the way back, I kept looking in the rearview mirror every 5 seconds, expecting to see that damn pickup appear again. But nothing happened. The return trip was quiet, almost too normal after everything. We got home and, for a moment, I thought maybe the police were right. Maybe it had just been stress, our imagination playing tricks on us. But when I went to take the luggage out of the trunk, I saw something that left me cold. There, stuck to the car's bumper, was a piece of paper. When I picked it up and opened it, I almost fell backward. It was a handwritten note. Have a good trip back. See you next time, family. That note was the last straw. I stood there, staring at the paper, unable to move. Laura noticed something was wrong and came to see what it was. When I showed her, I saw the fear return to her eyes. We stood there for a long time just looking at each other, not knowing what to do. The kids had already gone inside, happy to be back home, oblivious to the terror we were feeling. We decided not to tell the kids anything, I didn't want to scare them even more. But Laura and we couldn't relax. I kept going to the window, looking at the street, checking if there wasn't any black pickup parked around. At night, any little noise made me jump out of bed. Laura couldn't put her phone down, afraid of receiving a message from that strange profile. The next day, I went to the police station. I showed the note to the detective, told the whole story again. He listened attentively, but I could see he wasn't really believing it. He said he would investigate, but without much conviction. I left there feeling even more lost and frustrated. It was as if no one could help us, as if we had imagined it all. Days went by and nothing else happened. No sign of the pickup, no strange messages, nothing. But the fear wouldn't go away. I installed security cameras at home, started varying my routes to work, kept an eye on any black car that passed near us. Laura stopped using social media, afraid of being found again. The kids didn't understand why we were acting so strange. About 2 weeks after the incident, I was coming back from work. It was late afternoon, the sun was already setting. Suddenly, I saw in the rearview mirror a black pickup. My heart raced immediately. I started to sweat, hands trembling on the wheel. The pickup approached, got really close. I was almost having a panic attack right there. When the pickup pulled up beside me, I couldn't even look to the side. But then I heard a horn and a voice shouting, "Hey, your rear tire is flat." It was just a guy wanting to warn me about the tire. It wasn't the same pickup, wasn't the same guy. I pulled over, shaking so much I could barely get out. The tire was indeed flat. As I changed it, I kept thinking about how that fear was consuming me. I got home that day and talked to Laura. We needed to do something. We couldn't live like this. We decided to seek a therapist, someone who could help us deal with all that trauma. The first sessions were difficult. It was complicated to talk about something we didn't even understand properly. But gradually, it helped. We started to feel a little safer, a little more normal. Months passed. Life was returning to normal, or at least as normal as possible after all that. The kids stopped asking why we were always so nervous. Laura started using social media again, although still with some apprehension. I stopped looking back all the time, but deep down, that fear was still there. Every time I saw a black pickup on the street, my heart skipped a beat. A year after that crazy day, we decided to try the trip again. The kids were asking to visit their grandparents, and we didn't want that fear to control our lives forever. We prepared everything carefully, checked the car 1,000 times, planned every stop. On the day of the trip, I was nervous, but determined not to let it affect me. The trip started smoothly. Every time we passed a place that reminded me of that day, I felt a chill in my stomach. But nothing happened. No suspicious pickup, no strange guy at the gas stations. We arrived at the grandparents' own house without problems. It was such a relief that I almost cried. We spent the weekend there enjoying family time, almost forgetting about that whole nightmare. On the way back home, I was more relaxed. We were talking, laughing, listening to music. That's when it happened. A loud bang, the car jolting, flat tire. I pulled over to the shoulder, heart in my mouth. I got out to look at the damage, and that's when I saw it. It wasn't a normal puncture. There was a bullet mark on the tire. I looked around, terrified, but saw nothing. No car, no pickup, nothing. I changed the tire as fast as I could, my hands shaking so much I could barely hold the tools. Laura stayed in the car with the kids, consoling them as they had started crying from the shock. We drove back home in silence, each lost in our own thoughts. To this day, I can't explain what happened on that trip. I don't know who that guy was, why he chased us, why he shot our tire and disappeared. The police never found anything. The cameras never showed anything. It's as if it had all been a very real nightmare. Sometimes, I still wake up in the middle of the night thinking I heard the sound of a pickup. I guess I'll never fully understand or get over what happened. But we move on, living one day at a time, always looking in the rearview mirror, just in case. Report 5. My name is Linda, and I need to share something bizarre that happened to me today. I swear I never imagined a day at the gym could turn into such a nightmare. I woke up early as usual, to work out before work. I was super excited, you know. I had joined this new gym near my house a few weeks ago and was really enjoying it. I got there around 5 a.m. I like this time because the gym is practically empty, just me and half a dozen early birds. I started my normal routine, going straight to the stationary bike. I was pedaling peacefully when I noticed something strange under the monitor. At first, I thought it was part of the equipment, but something didn't seem right. I stopped exercising to examine it better and almost fell off the bike when I realized it was a mini camera. Like, really tiny, the kind you can hide anywhere. I was paralyzed, not knowing what to do. A bunch of questions went through my head. Who put this here? Why? Are there more around the gym? I looked around but didn't see anyone suspicious. The guy at the reception was napping, as always at this hour. I decided to keep the camera in my bag and continue my workout, but I couldn't concentrate. I kept looking around, super tense, feeling like someone might be watching me. I couldn't stand the curiosity and started checking other machines. That's when the day got even stranger. I found 2 more cameras, one under a bench in the locker room and another hidden behind a mirror. I was in shock, not knowing how to deal with all that. I kept the 3 cameras in my bag and waited for the manager to arrive. He showed up around 7 a.m., and I went straight to talk to him. I showed him the cameras and explained where I had found them. The guy turned pale, said he had no idea how those got there, and that he would call the police immediately. Within an hour, the gym turned into a real chaos. There were police officers everywhere, interrogating employees and clients who were arriving. The manager closed the gym to the public, and we all stayed there, giving statements and answering questions. I was exhausted and scared, but I couldn't leave yet. It was in the middle of all this confusion that I noticed a blonde woman I had never seen before. She didn't look like a client or employee, and she was acting strangely. She kept looking at me all the time, as if she knew me. When I went to the bathroom, she came in right after. Our eyes met in the mirror, and she gave a smile that made me super uncomfortable. I left there quickly but decided to keep an eye on her. The mysterious blonde kept roaming the gym all day. Whenever I looked, she was nearby, pretending to do something. I tried to talk to one of the police officers about her, but every time I pointed, she disappeared from sight. I started to think I was getting paranoid. It was almost noon when the police finally let us go. I was exhausted and just wanted to go home. But when I got to the parking lot, I saw the blonde getting into a car. Without thinking much, I wrote down the license plate. It was on impulse, you know? Something told me she had something to do with the cameras. I drove home feeling watched all the time. Every car behind me seemed suspicious. I got home and locked all the doors and windows. I called my boss and explained that I couldn't go to work, made up some story about feeling sick. I spent the whole afternoon restless and unable to relax. I kept looking out the window thinking I'd see the blonde or some suspicious car. At 3 p.m., the doorbell rang. My heart almost jumped out of my mouth. I looked through the peephole and saw it was a delivery guy. I opened the door, took the package, and closed it quickly. I hadn't even ordered anything, but apparently it was a late delivery. I opened the package carefully and almost screamed. Inside was a handwritten note. "Did you enjoy your day at the gym? This is just the beginning." Along with it was a photo of me exercising, clearly taken by one of those hidden cameras. I panicked. How had this reached my house? I called 911 right away. I explained everything that had happened, from the cameras at the gym to the package. The officer said he would send a patrol car, but it might take a while. I kept pacing back and forth, looking out the window every minute. Around 4:30 p.m., I heard a noise coming from my bedroom. It sounded like someone was going through my things. I grabbed the first object I saw, an umbrella, and went there slowly. I opened the door on impulse and nothing. The room was empty, the window closed, but my underwear drawer was open, and it looked like someone had gone through it. At that moment, I heard the doorbell again. I ran to the door thinking it was the police, but when I looked through the peephole, I saw the blonde woman. She was smiling and waving, as if she were an old friend. I was paralyzed, not knowing what to do. She rang the doorbell again, more insistently this time. My heart was beating so hard I thought I was going to faint. The blonde kept ringing the doorbell, each time more insistently. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to open the door and confront her, demand explanations. But fear paralyzed me. I stood there, still, looking through the peephole, praying for her to go away. After what seemed like an eternity, she stopped ringing the doorbell. I saw her move away from the door, look at the living room window and smile again. It was as if she knew I was there, watching. She walked calmly to the street and got into a car I hadn't noticed before, the same car from the gym parking lot. As soon as the car left, I ran to lock all the doors and windows again. I was shaking so much I could barely hold the keys. I called 911 again, desperate, asking where the patrol car was that they had promised to send. The dispatcher said it was on its way, told me to stay calm. While waiting for the police, I decided to call the gym manager. I needed to know if he had found out anything else about the cameras. He answered on the third ring, sounding nervous. He said the police had taken the cameras for forensic analysis and that the gym would be closed for a few days for investigation. When I asked about the blonde woman, he was quiet for a moment and then said he didn't know anything. I hung up feeling even more confused and scared. I looked at the clock. It was almost 6 p.m. and still no sign of the police. I decided to call my best friend, Carla. I needed to tell someone what was happening. I felt suffocated keeping all this to myself. Carla answered right away, and I poured everything out. The cameras, the mysterious blonde, the package, everything. She listened in silence and then said she was coming to my house immediately. She told me not to open the door for anyone until she arrived. About 20 minutes later, I heard a knock on the door. "Linda, it's me, Carla." I ran to open it, relieved to finally have someone with me. But when I opened the door, it wasn't Carla. It was the blonde. She smiled, that same unsettling smile, and said, "Hi, Linda, aren't you going to invite me in?" I tried to slam the door, but she was faster. She pushed the door hard, making me fall backward. She entered my house as if she owned the place, still smiling. "We have a lot to talk about," she said, closing the door behind her. At that moment, I heard a siren approaching. The police had finally arrived. The blonde looked at the window, hearing the siren getting closer. For a second, I saw a flash of concern in her eyes. I took advantage of this moment of distraction and ran to my bedroom, locking the door. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911 again, desperately whispering that the intruder was inside my house. I heard the blonde walking down the hallway, calling my name as if we were old friends. "Linda, you don't need to be afraid. I just want to talk," she said, her voice strangely calm. The contrast between her tone and the situation terrified me. The sirens got louder, and then I heard tires screeching in front of my house. There was a commotion outside, voices shouting, doors slamming. The blonde went silent. Everything seemed to freeze for a moment. Then, suddenly, I heard the sound of glass breaking. I cautiously left the room and saw that the living room window was shattered. The blonde had disappeared. The police burst into the house right after, guns drawn. I quickly explained what had happened, and they started a search of the neighborhood. But it was as if the blonde had evaporated. They found nothing, no footprints, not even the car I had seen earlier. I spent the night at the police station, giving my statement and looking at photos of suspects. None of them was the blonde. The detective in charge of the case seemed frustrated, as if he had lost an important lead. He mentioned something about other similar cases in the city, but didn't go into details. I returned home the next morning, escorted by a police officer. The gym was still closed, and the manager wasn't answering my calls anymore. I tried to get back to my routine, but it was impossible. Every noise startled me. Every blonde person on the street made me panic. Days passed, and the police couldn't find the blonde or discover anything about the cameras. It was as if everything had been a very real nightmare. I ended up canceling my gym membership and moved to my sister's house in another city. I needed to start over, away from all that. To this day, I can't explain what really happened that day. The feeling of being watched never completely left me. The investigations led nowhere, and over time, people started to doubt my story. But I know what I saw, what I experienced. And I know that somewhere out there, there's a mysterious blonde with a disturbing interest in my life. I just hope I never cross paths with her again.